Greetings. My name is Jedi Master and Master of the Order, Daayli Lequasa, and welcome back to our series on the new Jedi Training Manual. You've heard of some basic concepts, including basic strikes, and today I want to talk about something that's really important when you're executing a lightsaber duel, and that's footwork. So alright R6, why don't you go ahead and pan down to my feet? Now there's a number of ways you can stand to approach your duel. Master Pastorega talked about in her talk about balance, about turning your body slightly to your opponent. Now that works for some styles of lightsaber fighting, and others require you to be squared up. So first we're going to find our balance in the way she talked about. We're going to rock forward, rock back, make sure that's evened out. I've got a good sense of balance here. My knees are slightly bent, and I'm ready to move to engage an opponent. Now, I'm a Form 6 or Naman practitioner, and so for us, we actually stagger our feet a little bit. Now, I'm right-hand dominant, so I'm going to move my right foot forward and keep my left foot back. It's helpful to imagine that you're standing on a table with one center leg, and you have to maintain balance on that table. So in order to do that, you're going to stand on corners. You're going to stand on the top right corner or the back left corner in a Naman style stance. Now this stance is pretty common amongst all styles of saber fighting except Forms 2 and Forms 4, even though some Form 4 practitioners will still go into this what we call the squared stance. Now once you have a nice stance and your balance is appropriate, you can move. You have to take steps when you engage, both forward, backward, and side to side. It's very important, young Jedi, it's very important to never cross your feet. So once you're crossed up like this, your balance is gone. Even if you're executing what might be a very quick spin move, you still can't stand like this. Standing like this, it's even difficult for me to stay standing. So back into our good balanced stance. And the best way to move your feet is in small steps, in and out. Because you always want to make sure that when you're mid-step, if your opponent aggresses you, you can still put that foot back. So this is a good balanced basic step, in and out. Some have called this a cat step. I'm not sure why. Cats don't walk like that, but it is very soft and your feet come just barely off the ground. So if you were doing this in even like decently long grass, your feet would slide through the grass rather than going over them. This stance is important as you move forward and backward. The other thing you can do is shorten it up to be very quick. So instead of doing a full sweep with my leg, I might hop forward, hop back into short, quick steps. Now, if you do it smoothly, your opponent's unlikely to notice a very small distance change. So as you become a more advanced duelist, a very small distance change can be the difference between being able to strike your opponent and not. So once you're in this good stance, you can also switch which hand and foot is dominant very simply by moving to different corners on your table. And you can maintain that balance. Now, of course, in saber fighting, moving forward and moving backwards, what we call the cardinal directions, a north, south, east, and west movement, is only a small part of movement, but it's what we're specifically talking about today. So we've covered north and south, those quick steps forward or backward. Now we have to cover east and west. And in a stance like this, it's pretty easy to move east and west. The first thing you do, some people might be tempted to move their back foot, but you actually move your front foot first into a wider stance and let your back foot trail. So going the other direction, you take this foot that's towards this way and move it out first and let your foot trail. If you move your feet too close together, you lose that central balance that Pastorega talked about. So it's important that when you keep your feet spread, that you go to a wider stance and bring your other foot, as opposed to shortening your stance and making yourself susceptible to a force push or a physical bull rush. All right, R6, back up. Thanks, buddy. So when you're moving, you've saw what my feet look like. It's important that you see what my upper body looks like. So I'm gonna go from that normal standing with my feet shoulder width apart in line to that table stance. Now you probably noticed a very shortly perceptible difference in my height, but you'll notice that my shoulders stay over my hips and I'm ready to strike. I'm ready to move. I'm ready to parry, to orbital, which is a defensive strategy we'll talk about in a later video. Now, moving forward, very simple, but you'll notice that my head stays roughly the same height. You don't want to be going up and down, and you never want to lock your knees. Once you've locked your knees, your balance is gone and your ability to move is gone. So from this basic stance, north, south, east, and west. Making sure that your foot that's forward goes first in east and west, and your foot that's behind goes first in north and south, whichever direction you're moving. The basics of footwork are going to save your lives, young Jedi. They're going to be the difference between winning a saber duel and losing it. You might be tempted to focus purely on the strikes that Master Pasarega has talked about. It's important that when you practice those 5 basic strikes, that you practice them with proper footwork. You never want to drill bad habits into your body because you're going to have to unlearn them later. So, when you're practicing your saber duels, it's important that you focus first on your feet and then on your hands. Your feet are more likely to save your life in a saber duel than your actual saber will. Thank you very much for tuning in, and may the Force be with you. Always.